Hello and welcome to Who Dares Wolves TV. I am host Mike B, and today I will be reviewing a game. We'll be reviewing Shadows of Kilforth for All or Nothing Productions. And the disclaimer time: this copy of said game was supplied by All or Nothing for me to review. Just so we're out there and we all know where we're sitting and we're standing and doing. So All or Nothing obviously did Lifeform a couple of years ago. Really enjoyed Lifeform. Different designer, Tristan Hall, the director, creator, all-encompassing brain mass of All or Nothing is the designer behind Shadows of Kilforth and its predecessor, Gloom of Kilforth, set in this fantasy world that he's created for his characters and stuff that you'll be adventuring. Both games, but we're focused on Shadows. Shadows is a adventure game, a questing game of you taking a hero and leveling them up by traversing the Kilforth world, dealing with encounters with monsters and quests and characters and strangers, creating your own personal quest chain and completing that, leveling up, and then thundering off into the environment to thump the utter boggings out of a large monster. And that's what you're doing. So it shares a lot of thematic-y, gamey, mechanic-y DNA with stuff like Runebound is a similar to game, and even Talisman to a certain extent. Now, I'm personally, my childhood was engorged with fantasy movies and entertainment and Final Fantasy books. I mean, things like Kroll, which is a great, terrible movie. I love Kroll. Hulk the Slayer, which is more terrible than good, but it's still a lovely sort of joyful exuberance of fantasy stupidity. Things like that. Even Beastmaster. What a great movie. So they kind of were in my DNA growing up. And even though I love Lord of the Rings, and it's a bit stoic, but it is very sensible fantasy, and Game of Thrones is very sensible fantasy, I've probably seen those three naff movies more than I've seen them in probably viewing hours. They kind of absorbed into my DNA. I love a good fantasy yomp. A romp even, maybe yomp, I don't know. Maybe yomp is the fantasy equivalent of romp, who knows. So yeah, I love all that sort of stuff. And so I love this sort of stuff. I love it, I dig it. Talisman, for all its quirky stupidity and lengthy stupid game, I do enjoy occasional Talisman. Runebound again, the same. So anyway, all of that gibbering aside, we'll get back to the game review. So straight out the gate, let me tell you where I come down on this one. As a solo experience, Shadows of Kilforth is actually a riveting, entertaining, fun ride. It's good stuff, good solid sort of get your teeth into play game. As a 3 to 4 player game, it becomes a stodgy, spiraling, long-winded, almost turgid sort of, it just outstays its welcome just by a few hours. So that's just where we're at, okay? So let me quickly run through, because, you know, that's you come here and you guys are going to forward wind through after my rabble and get to the, well, what's he think about this? Well, there you go. That's what I think about. So let's dig into this. Let's tell you how the game plays, just a brief overview, and then I'll come down on where I am with all of this. So to play it, it's really simple stuff, actually. You have a hero. You select to start the game with a class. The board is represented by cards, a 5x5 grid of environments that are randomized every turn, except for the middle shrine in the middle of the game. And there will be environment cards that relate to where you walk around in this world, and item cards, which relate to all the lovely goodies and stuff and people and things you can find on your travels. The game is played in the daylight phase, where you will take your actions, which your actions are linked to your health. So you have 5 health, you have 5 actions. As you lose health, you will lose action points. As you gain health, you will gain action points. So what you're going to do is you're going to yomp around the thing, use an action point for doing things like moving, encountering stuff, doing a market actions, so selling and buying stuff. Those are the sort of things you're going to be doing, removing obstacles. And you're going to be doing all that sort of stuff. Fighting is basically dice rolling. You will have your character stats. There's a variety of ones. You have fight skills. You'll have, I'm going to say, book skills. That's not the terminology of the thing. But yeah, your scribe skills, your sneak skills for sneaking, and then you've got your influence, which is kind of like your, hey, charisma. So you've got those 4 skills. You can bolt stuff on. Your class ability will give you some bonuses to that, and the cards sort of lay in a tableau in front of you. You can get more level ups, and you'll get more equipment, which will boost a variety of those skills depending on what piece of equipment you have found. Now, how the game works, you have your own personal quest chain, your Saga, which you need to complete in its total full capacity. Once that's completed, you then are in a position to go away, find the big bad, and beat the living daylights out of them. And that's it. That's pretty much the game. Very similar to Runebound to a certain extent, in that Runebound worked the same way, that you're leveling up your character and equipment, and until you reach a point where you go, right, I'm ready, and you storm off and beat the living daylights out of the bad guy. So that is it. That's how it works. I mean, if you want to, there's dozens of how to play videos online. We go a great deal of depth, but you don't want me to do that because I'll bore you and I'll bore myself doing it. Do you know how long these videos take to do? It's torturous. Anyway, so where are we at? Pluses and minuses, I guess. That's kind of, we've got through that, but that's sum it up as to what's good, what's bad, what's indifferent. So straight out the rules. Rules is number 1. So rules. Now, Lifeform I had issues with. Their rulebook was hard work. It didn't quite do it. Now, this is all or nothing again, so there's another rulebook. Again, this kind of falls into some of the problems that Lifeform had. It is better. It is usable. You can kind of get your head around it. But I did have issues. It's like about 11 pages into this actual rulebook until it actually tells me how to play the game. There's a lot of telling me how the cards work and what they all means, which is lovely, but it's kind of front-loading an awful lot of information where you're going, oh, but I don't understand what does all this do? So there is that. It does eventually get to the rules. It does tell you stuff, and it's kind of there, and there's an index of kind of find stuff. There is still issues that I found with this, like I did with Lifeform, where sometimes these are like dead ends you get to. You go, okay, well, I found what I need. I'll go and look it up and see what that tells me. And it tells me everything but what I wanted to know. So that's a problem, but there's a way around this. It is Universal Head, who have produced these. Universal Head, lovely chap, produces these player guides. Essentially what he does is he takes that big old rulebook there and condenses it down into these 2 pages of text. This tells you everything from setup and what the game does. And then you can print a couple of these player aids, which you can give to your players, and that tells them everything they need to know. Very useful. Universal Head, love him dearly. Doesn't get enough praise. I praised him in a video previously, one of them, but yes, Universal Head. So Shadows of Kilforth, buy the game and then download that, because that will make your life a lot easier. Though there was still some ambiguities even with this that we had, but not much. So rules are okay. There is a few issues. There's the basic set of rules that are very straightforward to get your head around, and then there's some minutiae into all of that, which kind of sometimes leaves you going, oh. So that was a rules thing. Secondly, we had some issues with terminology. So essentially you exhaust a lot of cards in this game. However, the terminology is veil. You veil your cards, which fine, I get it. It's all to do with the thematic underpinning of the game and kind of absorb you into the world. But the issue is Jamie, who played the 4-player game with me, who may well be just an idiot. But he was incapable of grasping the concept that veiling his cards was exhausting them. Even though I repeated it, he would still constantly go, and I kind of get it. The change in some terminology of stuff that is known by game players, there is some simple terms that you say, well, you exhaust this or you do that and you do that. There's stuff that kind of muggles would never understand anyway, but us hardened game players, we kind of get this stuff. It's just kind of like a small detour in the way of just getting to the fun. I get it. I didn't have a major issue with it. Jamie's a moron, but there we go. But it's worth mentioning out there, because it's things like that. It's just like, oh, you're over-confusing this. Take it away. Just keep it simple. Keep it simple, stupid. So, that's that. The actual gameplay itself it's solid. It's, as I said, it's unexceptional, and that's a terrible word to use, but essentially it's not doing anything new. You are going to a location. You will then, if there's a card there, you have the option to encounter that card. If there's not a card, you'll draw a card and you will encounter it, and it will often come down to read some text And then there will be tests. You'll be rolling dice to essentially meet a target to complete that quest. We've seen that sort of stuff before. There's that. Monsters, fights, same principle in theory. The issue is with fighters, obviously you start getting battered. You will lose health every time you're in a fight. Now, this does come to where a bit of a bugbear, specifically with a 4-player game where there's an issue. The game we played the other week, I went out and stupidly, like a moron, just went charging out into the environment and ran into a tiger that basically maimed me. And it reduced my health down to 1 health. I ran away. It then took me around about 3 or 4 rounds, because using an action to heal myself up, to get myself to a position to do anything, because once I've lost that health, I'm down to 1 action. So you have to heal, get more actions, heal, get more actions, heal, get more actions. It's kind of like that miss a turn mechanic that everyone hates, a miss a turn mechanic. And I don't know, maybe there was a way around it, I don't know, but it is kind of a bit punishing. And in a 4-player game, you then find that essentially my turn would be, I'm going to heal. And then it would go to Robbie, who would do this and run around and do that and do something exotic, craft a mace or smoke a pipe or do something else. And then to Jamie, who's doing this and lovely. And then it comes back to me and I'm like, I'm going to heal again. And I'll sit there. So yes, it's a problem. It was a bit of annoyance. I kind of got over it and got myself back up and rolling again and actually got myself in a good state, and I learnt from my stupidity and didn't do that again. Jamie, mid-game, like a fucking moron, once again picked a fight, lost to his health, died in fact, which I mean he lost his gold, he got kicked back to the beginning, was down to 2 health. And it was a struggle, again, for him. The issue is at that point in time, the gloom, so every end of every day phase is a night phase, that essentially you pull a night card that will turn one of these lands into gloom. Essentially means it's corrupted, and if you're on it at the start of the turn, you will lose health. So he had a problem, he was down to a couple of health, and pretty much most of the environment around where he was degloomed. So it meant that if he sat there, he was going to lose more health and essentially be down to 1 action point if he was lucky at the start of that next turn. Or even worst case, nearby, he would die. He would die instantly. So he was having to use his very minimal actions to move, to try and find somewhere safe to get to then use his actions to heal himself up, to then get himself actually back into the game. And that process for him was a few rounds. I could see that he'd basically turned off at that point. He was just gone because it would become no fun. It wasn't fun. He was just doing that thing like I'd done at the start to get through the game. And it kind of ruined a little bit for him, kind of just popped his fun bubble. He did eventually kind of come back into it, but I got the feeling, looking at his vague, dribbled sort of lips and the faraway glances, he kind of switched off. We'd lost him at that point. So it's an issue. It's out there. It was a problem we had with the game. It's there. Okay, it's a thing. So be aware of. I mean, there is a sneak action. The characters will have sneak, and the key to it is that I definitely clocked on low on is you want to hide yourself early in the round, especially when you're weak, to scoot around to find your way past these enemies and do stuff, and come back to it when you're strong, when you've leveled up. A couple of other things, thematic-y kind of disconnects, is that your standees for your characters are fine, they're kind of cool using the art for the game, but they're actually standees representing your class, not your character, because you've got a class card and an actual species of character. So you're actually using your class's standees. That's all that are in the box. Now there is an expansion we came to Kickstarter, and there's one you can pick up that gives you those chits for the characters, but not in the base game. I get it that it's kind of a cost-saving thing, that there's easier to print 4 of them, say, than 10 of the other. I totally understand that, but it is a little bit of a disconnect where you're kind of just like, thematically disconnected from it. Again, it's a cosmetic thing. Now, the big issue I have with the game, that I kind of struggled to really, especially with a 4-player game, not so much the solo, because I could kind of in my headspace for that, is that you've got your Saga to complete. And that is a 3 or 4 card deck that you work your way through, completing quests in each one until you go to the next one. You'll level up until you've completed it. Fine, some lovely favour text on your cards, sets you all up. But essentially what you're doing is you're looking for keywords on other cards to match the keywords at the bottom of the card to complete it. And you essentially are set collecting. You're finding those 2 or 3 cards. Once you've got them, you hand them in with some cash and you complete it and you level up to the next one. Rinse, repeat. And it just kind of doesn't feel like I'm going on an epic quest. It doesn't really. You could kind of read between the lines and do the shortcut to it, and I'm going here to find this and do that. Yes, it's all there, but essentially it doesn't get away from the fact that all you're really doing is you're looking for these words and cards, and it kind of breaks the spell, because that's what you're doing, is looking at the cards. Whatever else comes up and whatever art's on it and whatever you're saying, whatever story you're reading, essentially you're still going, has it got that on it? No, it hasn't. I don't want that. So, that was a thing. But solo play was great because I could play it and I was in my own bubble, in my own world, and I could retell my story. I could embellish it to my own heart's delight playing it, and it was fine. I just found the higher player count and all that, it kind of drifted away like a fart in a thunderstorm. And we were more focused on just like, well, I need to do this to do that. Excuse me. Throughout the game, you've got all the skills I've said, and you can level them up by equipment or characters you meet or companions, and you're leveling all those different ones. You can more buffs to them as you go throughout the game, and you've got your levels. You can buff all that. Robbie had spent a great deal of time buffing his sneak skill and his influence and his scribing. He was well read and he could do all this wonderful stuff, but he hadn't focused on his fighting abilities. He hadn't need to, because he was basically one-shotting anything he came across that was slightly furry. Which was fine until it came to the end game, where he would have to kill the end boss, which all of the end bosses, they'll all fight. That's it. There is no one of the abilities come into play at that point in time. So you're only down to your fight actions, and at that point in time, it's a suicide run. If you don't manage to kill it in that fight run and you die, then that's it. You're out of the picture. You're done. And that seems an issue. Now, we're having into reading up that Gloom of Kilforth, the predecessor of this, had skills and abilities and options in there that you could use those other skills or abilities in that. Or even better, it would have been nice to see different boss types in that box that had some other ways of fighting them, so mixed it up a bit, whereas they are all just fight. And the option then, if you haven't got those fight skills, you're never going to complete. You're screwed. So yeah, there's all that. I mean, art design, as I say, is beautiful. The art is gorgeous, and all the cards, everything. It looks gorgeous. It's beautiful and all that. Lovely, stunning art. Yet somehow, for me personally, I kind of didn't really connect to it. I don't know whether it was that it's not a board, that it was the card layout routine, especially with the smaller cards. You can buy, again, the expansion with the bigger cards on it, but the smaller cards, when cards are going on top of them for the locations, it all just becomes a bit messy, a bit of a... Whereas I like a board. I like that experience of a board, something like Runebound or the City of Kings, which is similar to this, kind of Euro trash is what I call them, which they're Euro mechanisms with this thematic underpinning and overpinning. It doesn't. I mean, some of the art is wonderful. Some of it's great. It looks great. You look at it, some of it looks like you could have a poster on your wall. Some of it, but yeah, as a whole, it just kind of doesn't knit together, doesn't absorb me into that world. I just wasn't gripped. But again, there is a lot of people I know play these runs and enjoy the Kilforth games for what they are. So take that as just purely from my perspective and what I'm saying. So, as a single player experience, as something to get to the table and play on your own, or with maybe a partner or a loved one, then yes, I think I can recommend Shadows of Kilforth as that. If anything of interest of the art interests you or anything else like that, and you like a fantasy style of game, then yes, as a single player or a two-player experience, then there's a lot to enjoy in here. It's a lot of fun. As a four-player game, I can't recommend it. I just think it's too long and it's unwieldy. I would rather suggest something like Runebound, but even that doesn't work at 4 players. If you're going to play something, a 4-player epic fantasy game, then go and play Gloomhaven. That's what I'm going to say on the matter, because that is the king, in my opinion, of that. But yeah, as it stands, it's a solid bit of fun. Good components, there's no issues with that. The card quality is great. All the wooded components, all really nice, all beautiful. And if you're really into it, then you can pick up the expansion and get those boss standees and get those big environment cards. Some on bits and pieces of cards, some extra stuff it can throw into the item decks and all that as well. So there's a lot of variety, a lot of world to explore there, and you can pick up the Gloom of Kilforth, the original game, and that all combines. There's variety. I know there's variations in the box. You can wedge all that together, even a bigger, more epic, huge, sprawling game. So there's lots of leg room in there if that's your thing. So thank you for tuning in. I've been Mike B. This has been Who Dares Rolls TV. We do occasionally review stuff, as you can see. Thank you for Tristan and All or Nothing for supplying Shadows of Kilforth. I've loved and enjoyed my single player games of it. It's been very solid fun, really enjoyable, and it's something that I personally, when I get the time, will revisit a couple of solo games. I don't think as a group that we're going to be going back to it. It's too long a game. We haven't got any time to play games as it is. We can't spend 7 hours playing this. I'm sorry, Tristan, it can't happen. But yeah, cracking stuff, really good. I mean, you know, All or Nothing, as a UK publisher, pushing out some stuff. I know that Tristan's done some two-player historical battle games. Art, again, looks stunning in them. I mean, Lifeform, I highly recommend, was really enjoyable. Thematic, alien, love letter, brilliant game. And I'd be interested to see what else they produce coming up and what else is coming out. So yes, there you go. And you should watch Beastmaster and Hawk the Slayer and Kroll. I'm just saying, if you've not watched them. So thank you for tuning in. That was Shadows of Kilforth. That was a semblance of a review. And I have been Mike B. And I will be back soon with some more of this or some of the other. And until then, keep your sword sharp. Yes, keep your sword sharp and your wits witty. And I'll be back soon with some more of this, I guess. Ta-ta.